There exists within the human experience a deception so profound, so seamlessly woven into the fabric of our daily lives, that we mistake it for truth itself. This deception whispers to us from the moment we open our eyes each morning until we close them each night. It tells us we are separate from each other, separate from nature, separate from the very source of life that pulses through every atom of our being. This illusion of separation is perhaps the greatest cause of suffering humanity has ever known, yet it is nothing more than a trick of perception, a veil that obscures the magnificent truth of our interconnected existence. When you look into a mirror, what do you see? You see a body with defined edges, a form that appears to end where space begins. Your mind immediately creates the story of me and not me, drawing invisible boundaries that seem as real as the ground beneath your feet. But this perception, convincing as it may be, is like watching shadows on a cave wall and believing them to be the entire reality. The boundaries you perceive are no more real than the horizon line that appears to separate earth from sky, a beautiful illusion created by the limitations of perspective. Take a moment now to pause and breathe consciously. Draw in 4 slow, deep breaths, allowing each exhale to soften the edges of where you think you end and the world begins. As you breathe, consider this. The oxygen entering your lungs was moments ago part of a tree, part of the atmosphere, part of the vast ocean of air that connects every living being on this planet. Where exactly do you end and the world begin? The breath reveals the first crack in the illusion of separation. This fundamental deception extends far beyond the physical realm. We carry within us the belief that our thoughts are ours alone, that our emotions belong only to us, that our consciousness is somehow sealed off from the consciousness of others. We live as if we are isolated islands of awareness in an unconscious universe, struggling to make meaning and connection from our lonely shores. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Consciousness is not produced by the brain any more than music is produced by a radio. The brain, magnificent as it is, serves as a receiver, a focusing device that allows the infinite field of awareness to express itself through the unique lens of your individual experience. This illusion of separation creates a cascade of suffering that ripples through every aspect of human life. When we believe we are separate, we live in fear. Fear of loss, fear of death, fear that there is not enough love, not enough resources, not enough time. We compete rather than collaborate. We hoard rather than share. We build walls rather than bridges. The ego, that false sense of self, thrives on this separation, constantly working to maintain the boundaries that keep us feeling small, limited, and alone. But what if this entire experience of separation is simply a case of mistaken identity? Your emotions are also constantly communicating with every cell in your body, sending chemical messages that influence everything from your immune function to your cardiovascular health. States of love, gratitude, and joy flood your system with healing chemicals that promote regeneration and vitality. States of chronic anger, fear, or resentment create chemical environments that can contribute to inflammation and disease over time. This is not to judge difficult emotions, but to understand the profound impact that your emotional life has on your overall well-being. Learning to work consciously with emotional energy also opens the door to using your feelings as guidance for making decisions that are aligned with your deepest truth. Emotions that feel expansive, light, and energizing are often pointing you toward choices that serve your highest good. Emotions that feel contractive, heavy, or draining may be warning you away from situations or relationships that are not in alignment with who you are becoming. Your emotional body is constantly providing feedback about what serves your growth and what holds you back. When you master the art of allowing emotional energy to flow freely through your system, you discover that your capacity for feeling becomes a gateway to deeper states of awareness and connection. Emotions that once seemed like obstacles become doorways to greater understanding, empathy, and spiritual growth. You realize that the goal is not to live without difficult emotions, but to develop such a fluid relationship with all emotional energy that nothing can shake your fundamental peace and well-being. This fluid relationship with emotion is one of the hallmarks of emotional maturity and spiritual development. You learn to feel deeply without being defined by what you feel, to remain centered in your essential nature while allowing the full range of human emotion to move through you like music through an instrument. In this way, your emotional life becomes not a source of suffering, but a rich tapestry of energy that adds color, depth, and meaning to the journey of conscious awakening. Beyond the world of solid objects and predictable cause and effect relationships lies a realm that most people never suspect exists. Yet it is the very foundation from which all of reality emerges moment by moment. This is the quantum field, an invisible ocean of pure potential that contains every possibility that has ever existed or ever could exist, waiting in a state of perfect readiness to be called into manifestation through the focusing power of conscious intention. You are not separate from this field, but are intimately connected to it at every moment, constantly drawing from its infinite possibilities to create the reality you experience. The quantum field is not empty space, but the fullness of all potential, a realm where the usual laws of time and space bend and dissolve, where everything exists in a state of infinite possibility, until consciousness collapses those possibilities into specific experiences through the act of observation and intention. This is not mystical speculation, but the practical foundation of quantum mechanics, the most successful theory in the history of science. Every atom in your body is constantly emerging from this field and returning to it, making you a temporary crystallization of infinite potential rather than a solid, separate object moving through space. What makes this understanding revolutionary is the recognition that consciousness is not just an observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. The quantum field responds to consciousness like a cosmic computer responding to software, manifesting according to the quality of awareness, intention, and belief that you bring to each moment. This means that you are not a victim of circumstances, but a co-creator of your experience, constantly programming reality through the signals you send into the field, through your thoughts, emotions, and deepest intentions. Take a moment to feel into this truth. Allow your awareness to expand beyond the boundaries of your physical form and sense yourself as part of an infinite field of pure potential. This is not imagination, but a recognition of your actual relationship to the source of all creation. Every breath you take draws from this field. Every thought you think sends ripples through it. Every intention you hold becomes a seed planted in the fertile ground of infinite possibility. The ancient traditions spoke of this realm as the void, the source, the unmanifest, the eternal womb from which all of creation continuously emerges. Modern physics describes it in terms of virtual particles, zero-point energy, and quantum fluctuations, but both are pointing to the same fundamental reality: the existence of a realm that is simultaneously nothing and everything, empty and infinitely full, the source from which all possibilities arise and to which they return. Understanding your connection to the quantum field changes everything about how you approach your life and your goals. Instead of trying to force outcomes through struggle and effort alone, you learn to align yourself with the natural flow of manifestation that moves from the unmanifest into form. This doesn't mean becoming passive, but rather learning to work with the deeper currents of creation, planting seeds of intention in the field and then allowing them to unfold according to the perfect timing and wisdom of the universe. The process of manifestation from the quantum field follows certain natural principles that ancient wisdom and modern science both recognize. First is the principle of clarity. The field responds most readily to intentions that are clear, specific, and aligned with your deepest values and purpose. Vague or conflicted intentions create vague or conflicted results, while clear, heartfelt intentions allow the field to organize resources and opportunities with remarkable precision. Second is the principle of detachment. While you must be clear about what you intend to create, you must also release your attachment to exactly how and when it manifests. The field has access to resources, timing, and pathways that the conscious mind cannot foresee, and holding too tightly to specific outcomes often blocks the very manifestation you are seeking. This is the delicate balance between intention and surrender, between active participation and allowing. Third is the principle of alignment. The most powerful manifestations occur when your conscious intentions are aligned with your unconscious beliefs, your emotional state, and your deepest sense of purpose. When there is internal conflict between what you say you want and what you unconsciously believe you deserve, or what fears are operating beneath the surface, the field receives mixed signals and manifestation becomes erratic or blocked altogether. The quantum field also operates according to the principle of non-locality, meaning that your intentions can influence events and circumstances far beyond your physical location. This is why prayer, distant healing, and focused intention can have measurable effects across vast distances. The field connects all things in a web of instantaneous communication that transcends the limitations of space and time as we normally understand them. Working consciously with the quantum field requires a shift from the mechanistic thinking that dominates much of modern life to a more organic, intuitive approach that honors the mystery and intelligence of the creative process. You learn to plant seeds of intention and then trust the field to handle the details, much like a gardener who plants seeds and then trusts the earth, rain, and sun to work their magic without trying to control every aspect of growth. This is not about magical thinking or bypassing practical action, but about understanding that your actions are most effective when they arise from a deep connection to the field of infinite possibility. When you align your efforts with the natural flow of manifestation, you often find that the right opportunities, people, and resources appear with synchronistic timing, as if the universe is conspiring to support your highest intentions. The quantum field is also the realm where healing occurs, where spontaneous recovery and miraculous transformation become possible. When consciousness accesses the field of pure potential, it can reorganize matter and energy in ways that transcend the usual limitations of physical law. This is why intention, prayer, and deep states of meditation can sometimes produce healing effects that medical science cannot fully explain. They are accessing the level of reality where all possibilities exist and anything can be transformed. As you develop your relationship with the quantum field, you begin to live more and more from the level of cause rather than effect, recognizing yourself as a creative force rather than a passive recipient of circumstances. You learn to work with the same principles that govern the formation of galaxies and the growth of flowers, aligning your individual will with the cosmic intelligence that orchestrates the dance of creation throughout the universe. There exists within your chest a center of intelligence that modern science is only beginning to understand, an organ that is far more than a mechanical pump circulating blood through your body. Your heart contains its own neural network with over 40,000 neurons, more than many regions of the brain, and generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, extending several feet beyond your physical form. But even more remarkable than these physiological facts is the heart's capacity to become the primary healing force in your life when you learn to live from its wisdom rather than from the endless chatter of mental analysis. The heart knows what the mind can only guess at. While your brain processes information sequentially, analyzing and categorizing experience, your heart perceives wholeness, recognizing the interconnected nature of all life and responding from that place of unity. When you shift your center of awareness from your head to your heart, you begin to access a different kind of intelligence, one that operates through love, compassion, and intuitive knowing rather than through logic, judgment, and separation. Research in the field of neurocardiology has revealed that the heart sends more signals to the brain than it receives, meaning that your heart is literally teaching your brain how to respond to life. When your heart is in a state of coherence, a smooth, harmonious rhythm that occurs during states of appreciation, gratitude, and love, it sends signals to the brain that promote clarity, creativity, and emotional stability. This heart-brain coherence is one of the most powerful states you can cultivate for both healing and optimal performance in every area of life. Place your hand on your heart now and take several slow, deep breaths, allowing your attention to rest in this center of wisdom. As you breathe, imagine drawing breath directly into your heart space, allowing it to expand and soften with each inhale. Notice how this simple shift of attention changes the quality of your entire experience, bringing a sense of peace and groundedness that cannot be achieved through mental effort alone. The heart's capacity for healing extends far beyond your individual body. When you live from an open heart, you become a healing presence for everyone you encounter. The electromagnetic field generated by your heart, when coherent and loving, actually influences the heart rhythms of people around you, creating a field of coherence that can calm anxiety, reduce stress, and promote healing in others. This is why simply being in the presence of someone who embodies genuine love and compassion can be profoundly therapeutic, even without any words being spoken. Love, it turns out, is not just an emotion, but a healing force that operates at the deepest levels of biology. When you experience genuine love, whether for another person, for yourself, or for life itself, your body produces a cascade of healing chemicals, including oxytocin, endorphins, and growth hormones that promote cellular repair, boost immune function, and slow the aging process. Chronic states of love and appreciation literally create a chemistry of regeneration within your body, while chronic states of fear, anger, and resentment create a chemistry of breakdown and disease. The practice of gratitude is one of the most direct ways to activate the heart's healing intelligence. When you focus your attention on what you appreciate about your life, your relationships, or even your challenges, your heart immediately shifts into a state of coherence that sends healing signals throughout your entire system. Gratitude is not just a nice idea or a spiritual practice. It is a powerful technology for transforming your physiology and accessing your innate capacity for healing and renewal. But the heart's wisdom extends beyond emotional healing to encompass the healing of relationships, communities, and even global consciousness. When you approach conflict from a place of genuine compassion rather than defensive reactivity, you create space for understanding and resolution that would be impossible from a purely mental approach. The heart sees through the surface differences that divide people to the common humanity that unites them, making it the natural mediator in any situation requiring healing and reconciliation. Forgiveness, one of the heart's greatest gifts, is perhaps the most powerful healing force available to human beings. When you forgive, not as a mental decision but as a genuine opening of the heart, you release not only the other person but yourself from the toxic chemistry of resentment and blame. Forgiveness is not about condoning harmful behavior, but about freeing yourself from the energetic burden of carrying past hurts in your cellular memory. This release creates space for new possibilities to emerge and allows your natural healing mechanisms to function optimally. The heart also serves as your most reliable compass for making decisions too, that are aligned with your deepest truth and highest good. While the mind can analyze options and weigh pros and cons, only the heart can tell you what truly serves your growth and fulfillment. When you learn to consult your heart before making important decisions, you begin to navigate life from a place of inner wisdom rather than external expectations or societal pressures. Learning to live from the heart is not about becoming emotional or losing your capacity for rational thinking. It is about integrating the wisdom of the heart with the intelligence of the mind, allowing these two centers of awareness to work together in harmony. When heart and mind are aligned, you gain access to both the compassionate wisdom that sees the bigger picture and the practical intelligence needed to navigate the details of daily life with skill and effectiveness. Most people spend their entire lives believing what they think, following what they have been taught, and accepting what others tell them about the nature of reality. They live in a world of second-hand knowledge, building their understanding of themselves and their place in the universe on foundations they have never personally examined or verified. But there comes a moment in every spiritual journey when the seeker must move beyond belief into direct knowing, beyond concepts into immediate experience, beyond the authority of others into the authority of their own awakened awareness. Living from the place of knowing is fundamentally different from living from the place of believing. Beliefs can be changed, challenged, or lost, leaving you feeling uncertain and insecure. But knowing is self-evident, unshakable, and immediately available because it arises from your direct experience of truth rather than from mental concepts about truth. When you know something directly, you don't need to defend it, explain it, or convince others of it because its reality is so obvious to you that external validation becomes irrelevant. This knowing is not intellectual understanding, but a recognition that occurs at the level of being itself. It is the difference between reading about water and actually being thirsty and drinking. You can study descriptions of water, memorize its chemical formula, and understand its properties, but none of this knowledge can satisfy your thirst. Only the direct experience of drinking can do that. Similarly, you can study spiritual teachings for decades, but only the direct recognition of your true nature can satisfy the deep thirst for meaning and fulfillment that drives all spiritual seeking. The transition from believing to knowing often occurs in moments of stillness, when the mind's constant activity settles enough for deeper truths to become self-evident. In these moments, you might suddenly recognize that you are not your thoughts, but the awareness in which thoughts appear. You might directly perceive that you are not separate from life, but are life itself temporarily experiencing itself through the lens of individuality. These recognitions don't come through thinking, but through a kind of seeing that bypasses the analytical mind altogether. Take a moment now to rest in the space between thoughts and notice what is self-evidently true about your experience right now. You exist. This is undeniable. You are aware. This is immediate and obvious. You are the witness of all experience. This becomes clear when you look for the one who is looking. These are not beliefs to be accepted, but recognitions to be directly verified in the laboratory of your own consciousness. The place of knowing is always here, always available, always accessible, because it is what you are rather than something you can acquire or achieve. You cannot gain knowing through effort, because effort implies moving towards something you don't already have. But knowing is your natural state, temporarily obscured by the mind's habit of seeking truth in thoughts and concepts, rather than recognizing the truth that is prior to all thinking. This is why spiritual practice is ultimately about removing obstacles rather than adding something new. Meditation doesn't create awareness, it reveals the awareness that is already here. Self-inquiry doesn't produce the self, it dissolves the illusions that obscure the self that you have always been. Prayer doesn't bring you closer to the divine, it recognizes the divinity that is your essential nature. Living from the place of knowing brings a quality of certainty and peace that is independent of external circumstances. When you know who you are at the deepest level, the ups and downs of life lose their power to disturb your fundamental equilibrium. You can fully engage with the world of form while remaining rooted in the formless awareness that is your true nature. This is not detachment, but a deeper kind of engagement that comes from knowing that nothing can ultimately threaten or diminish what you truly are. This knowing also transforms how you relate to others, for you begin to recognize the same essential nature in everyone you encounter. Beneath the surface differences of personality, background, and belief, you perceive the same consciousness looking out through different eyes, the same life force expressing itself through infinite forms. This recognition naturally gives rise to compassion, understanding, and a sense of unity that transcends all apparent divisions. The authority that comes from knowing is quiet and unassuming because it has nothing to prove. It doesn't need to argue or convince because it rests in direct experience rather than conceptual understanding. This inner authority frees you from the need to constantly seek validation from others or to measure your worth against external standards. You begin to trust your own inner guidance and to make decisions from a place of authentic knowing rather than from fear or social conditioning. When you live from this place of knowing, your words carry a different quality because they arise from direct experience rather than from mental concepts or borrowed wisdom. You speak what you have verified in your own consciousness, sharing not information but transmission, the direct communication of truth from being to being that can awaken recognition in others without relying on intellectual explanation. In the space between your thoughts, in the pause between your breaths, in the stillness that exists at the center of all activity, lies a silence that is not empty but infinitely full. This is not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence, the pregnant pause from which all sound emerges and to which all sound returns. Most people fear this silence, filling every moment with noise, activity, and mental chatter because they mistake it for emptiness or boredom. But this silence is actually the source of all creativity, all healing, all wisdom, and all transformation. The silence that transforms everything is not something you need to create or achieve, but something you need to recognize and honor. It is always here, always available, underlying every experience like the canvas beneath a painting. Even in the midst of the loudest noise or the most intense activity, this silence is present, waiting to be acknowledged and entered. It is the silent witness of all experience, the unchanging background against which all change occurs. When you learn to rest in this silence, Even for brief moments, you discover that it is not empty but vibrantly alive with potential. It is the womb of creation, the space from which inspiration arises, the field in which healing occurs naturally and effortlessly. In this silence, the artificial boundaries created by thought begin to dissolve, revealing the seamless unity that underlies all apparent diversity. Problems that seemed impossible to solve from the level of thinking often resolve themselves spontaneously when approached from this deeper dimension of silence. Begin to notice the silence that exists between your thoughts right now. Don't try to create it or maintain it, simply acknowledge that it is already here. This gap between thoughts is not empty space, but pure awareness itself, the luminous presence that makes all experience possible. As you become more familiar with this silence, you may notice that it seems to expand, revealing itself to be far more vast and significant than the thoughts that appear within it. This transformative silence is also present in the space between your heartbeats, in the pause at the end of each breath, in the moment of transition between sleeping and waking. These natural gaps in experience are doorways into the infinite, opportunities to recognize your essential nature as the silence itself rather than the activity that arises within it. Learning to consciously enter these natural pauses throughout your day is one of the most direct ways to access the transformative power of silence. The healing that occurs in silence is different from any therapy or treatment that works at the level of doing. In silence, healing happens at the level of being, where the very structures that create suffering begin to dissolve. Old patterns of thought and emotion that have persisted for years can suddenly lose their grip when exposed to the light of pure awareness. This is why many people experience profound shifts in consciousness during meditation retreats or extended prayer. High odds of silence, the accumulated layers of conditioning begin to fall away naturally when they are no longer being reinforced by constant mental activity. Silence is also the natural state of communication at the deepest level. Words can convey information, but silence can transmit understanding directly from one consciousness to another. This is why simply sitting in silence with someone who embodies deep peace can be more transformative than hours of conversation. The silence itself becomes a teaching, a transmission of the truth that cannot be captured in words, but can be directly recognized by anyone who is receptive to it. The creative power that emerges from silence is unlike any creativity that comes from mental effort or technique. In silence, ideas arise fully formed, solutions appear spontaneously, and artistic expression flows effortlessly from a source that seems infinitely intelligent and resourceful. This is because silence connects you directly to the field of infinite potential from which all creativity emerges. When you create from this place, you become a conduit for intelligence that far exceeds the limitations of personal knowledge or skill. Learning to embrace silence also transforms your relationship with solitude. Instead of feeling lonely or bored when alone, you begin to treasure these opportunities to return to your essential nature. Solitude becomes not an absence of company, but a presence so complete and fulfilling that external stimulation becomes unnecessary. You discover that you are never actually alone because the silence that you are is the same silence that pervades all of existence. This silence is not separate from sound, but is the very ground from which all sound arises. When you recognize this, even the noisiest environments become opportunities to deepen your connection to the underlying silence. You learn to hear the silence that contains all sounds, to rest in the stillness that remains undisturbed by any activity, to find the peace that exists at the center of any storm. As you cultivate a deeper relationship with transformative silence, you may find that your need for external entertainment, constant stimulation, and mental activity begins to naturally diminish. Not because you are forcing yourself to withdraw from life, but because you have discovered a source of fulfillment that is always available, always fresh, always perfectly satisfying. This silence becomes your refuge, your teacher, your healer, and ultimately your recognition of what you have always been beneath all the layers of identification with thought, emotion, and experience. The moment has come to recognize the most fundamental truth of your existence, the realization that dissolves every question and satisfies every longing. You are not a separate being having occasional spiritual experiences. You are life itself, temporarily dreaming that you are separate, temporarily forgetting your own infinite nature, temporarily playing the cosmic game of hide and seek with yourself. This recognition is not a belief to be adopted or a concept to be understood, but a reality to be directly experienced, a homecoming to the truth that you have never actually left. Every breath you take is life breathing itself through the temporary form you call your body. Every thought that arises is life thinking itself through the temporary focus you call your mind. Every emotion you feel is life feeling itself through the temporary expression you call your personality. You are not separate from life any more than a wave is separate from the ocean or a ray of sunlight is separate from the sun. The wave is ocean temporarily taking the form of a wave. The ray is sun temporarily expressing itself as light. You are life temporarily experiencing itself as the unique individual you believe yourself to be. This understanding transforms everything because it reveals that you have never been alone, never been separate, never been lacking anything essential for your well-being and fulfillment. The search for meaning, purpose, love, and connection that has driven your entire life has been the search for your own true nature. Life has been seeking itself through your eyes, loving itself through your heart, awakening to itself through your consciousness. Every experience you have ever had has been life exploring its own infinite possibilities through the particular lens of your individual awareness. When this recognition fully dawns, not as an intellectual understanding but as a lived reality, the fundamental anxiety that underlies human existence simply evaporates. The fear of death dissolves because you realize that what you truly are cannot die. It is the deathless life force itself. The fear of loss disappears because you understand that you cannot lose what you are. The fear of not being enough fades away because you recognize yourself as the infinite source from which all seeming limitations arise. Feel into this truth now, not with your mind but with your entire being. Notice that the life force flowing through you is not yours personally, but is the same life force that moves through every living being, that grows every flower, that beats every heart, that shines through every star. You are not a recipient of life, but life itself, not a container for consciousness, but consciousness itself, not separate from the universe, but the universe temporarily focusing itself through the aperture of individual awareness. This realization brings with it a profound sense of responsibility and freedom. If you are life itself, then how you live matters not just to you personally, but to the entire fabric of existence. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every emotion you feel sends ripples through the interconnected web of consciousness that connects all beings. You cannot harm another without harming yourself because there is ultimately no other. You cannot heal yourself without healing the whole because you are not separate from the whole. Yet this responsibility is not a burden but a celebration, for it reveals that your individual life has cosmic significance. Every moment of love you experience, every act of kindness you perform, every instant of awareness you embody contributes to the awakening of consciousness throughout the universe. You are not just living your own life, you are life itself living through you, exploring its own nature, discovering new possibilities for expression and experience. The freedom that comes with this recognition is the freedom from the prison of separate selfhood that has confined human consciousness for millennia. When you know yourself as life itself, you are no longer limited by the beliefs, fears, and conditioning that seem to define who you were. You realize that you can choose who to be in each moment, how to respond to each situation, what kind of energy to embody and express. You are not trapped by your past because the past belongs to the character you were playing, not to the life force that you are. This freedom also extends to your relationship with death, which is revealed to be not an ending but a transition, not a loss but a transformation. Just as water becomes vapor and then returns to water, consciousness temporarily takes individual form and then returns to its source. But the essential nature of consciousness itself is never born and never dies. What if the you that feels separate is not your true self at all, but rather a collection of thoughts, memories, and sensations that you have mistakenly taken to be who you are? The mystics throughout history have pointed to this profound recognition. You are not the wave worrying about its individual existence. You are the ocean itself, temporarily expressing as a wave. The invitation that life extends to each of us is to see through this fundamental deception, to recognize that separation is a concept that exists only in thought, never in reality. When you cut your finger, the entire body responds with healing intelligence. When a forest is threatened, the trees communicate through underground networks, sharing resources and information. Nature knows no separation, only the dance of interconnection, the symphony of wholeness expressing itself through infinite forms. As you move through this exploration, allow yourself to question the most basic assumptions about who and what you are, the walls that seem so solid, the boundaries that appear so real, the separation that feels so convincing. All of these are simply phenomena arising in consciousness, like clouds forming and dissolving in an infinite sky. You are not separate from life. You are life itself, temporarily forgetting its own nature, playing the cosmic game of hide and seek with itself. The recognition of this truth is not a belief to be adopted, but a reality to be directly experienced, a homecoming to the wholeness that you have never actually left. The ancient Sanskrit greeting Namaste carries within it a profound recognition that dissolves the illusion of separation in a single moment. It means the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, but even more simply, it acknowledges that there is only one divine expressing itself as the beautiful diversity of all that is. When this recognition dawns not as a concept but as a lived reality, the fundamental deception that has shaped human experience for millennia begins to dissolve, revealing the luminous truth that has been patiently waiting beneath the surface all along. For thousands of years, mystics and sages have spoken of realities that seem to defy everything we thought we knew about the nature of existence. They described a universe where everything is connected, where consciousness is fundamental, where the act of observation itself shapes reality. These teachings were often dismissed as beautiful poetry or wishful thinking, relegated to the realm of spirituality, and kept separate from the serious business of understanding how the world actually works. But something extraordinary has happened in the past century. Science has begun to discover that the mystics were right all along. Quantum physics, perhaps the most successful theory in the history of science, has revealed a universe that is far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience would suggest. At the subatomic level, the building blocks of matter behave in ways that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations of scientists. Death becomes not something to fear, but something to understand as the natural completion of one particular expression of life, making way for new expressions to emerge. Living from this understanding means that every day becomes an opportunity to express life more fully, to love more completely, to serve more genuinely. You stop trying to get something from life and start looking for ways to give life through your unique talents, perspectives, and contributions. Work becomes service. Relationships become opportunities for mutual awakening. Challenges become invitations for growth and deeper understanding. The journey that began with the recognition of separation as an illusion completes itself with the recognition that you are the very life force that seemed separate. The circle closes, the seeking ends, the questions dissolve into the living answer that you have always been. You realize that you were never lost, never broken, never anything less than the infinite consciousness playing at being finite. The eternal awareness pretending to be temporal, the boundless love masquerading as a separate individual. This is not the end of your human experience, but the beginning of living that experience from the truth of what you are. You continue to play your role in the cosmic drama, but now you know it is a role, a temporary expression of something far greater. You continue to feel emotions, think thoughts, and face challenges, but now you know these are all movements within your own infinite being, waves on the surface of the ocean that you are. The greatest illusion, that you are separate from life, dissolves completely in the light of this recognition. You awaken from the dream of separation into the reality of unity, from the story of limitation into the truth of infinite possibility, from the belief that you are a human being having a spiritual experience into the know, and knowing that you are spirit itself having a human experience. This is not a destination you arrive at, but a reality you remember, not an achievement you earn, but a truth you acknowledge, not something you become, but something you have always been. In this recognition, all seeking comes to rest, all questions find their answer, all longing discovers its fulfillment. You are home, and you realize you have never left. You are whole, and you understand you were never broken. You are life itself, and this has always been the truth, waiting patiently beneath every illusion for the moment of recognition that changes everything while changing nothing at all. The invitation now is not to believe these words, but to verify them in the laboratory of your own awareness, to test them against the deepest knowing of your own heart, to live them into reality through the choices you make and the consciousness you embody, moment by moment. For this truth is not something to be grasped by the mind, but something to be lived by the totality of your being, not a philosophy to be adopted, but a reality to be embodied, not information to be learned, but wisdom to be lived. In every breath, in every heartbeat, in every moment of awareness, life is recognizing itself as you, awakening to its own nature through your consciousness, celebrating its own infinite creativity through your unique expression. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, life awakening to its own mystery, love discovering its own boundless nature. This is who you have always been, who you are now, and who you will always be. Life itself playing the beautiful temporary game of being you. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until the moment they are observed, at which point they choose a single state. This phenomenon, known as the observer effect, suggests that consciousness plays a fundamental role in the very fabric of reality itself. Consider what this means for a moment. The electrons in your body, the same electrons that were forged in the heart of ancient stars, exist in a state of infinite potential until the moment of observation collapses that potential into a specific experience. You are not just observing reality, you are participating in its creation with every moment of awareness. The boundary between observer and observed, between subject and object, begins to dissolve when we understand that the act of conscious observation is what brings the world of form into being from the quantum field of pure possibility. This is not merely an abstract scientific principle, but a truth with profound implications for how we understand healing, manifestation, and the very nature of human potential. When consciousness is recognized as the ground of being, rather than an accidental byproduct of matter, everything changes. The mystics claim that consciousness is all there is, finds its echo in the physicist's recognition that information and awareness appear to be more fundamental than matter and energy. Take another moment to breathe consciously, allowing your awareness to rest in the space between thoughts. In this silence, notice that you are not producing consciousness. You are consciousness itself, temporarily focusing through the instrument of a human nervous system. This focusing creates the appearance of a separate self, but the consciousness itself is unlimited, unbound, and shared by all beings. The phenomenon of quantum entanglement provides another bridge between ancient wisdom and modern science. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected across any distance, instantly affecting each other regardless of the space between them. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, but the mystics would have recognized it immediately as a demonstration of the underlying unity that connects all things. The sense of separation that dominates human experience is revealed to be a local phenomenon, true only at the level of ordinary perception, but dissolving completely when we examine reality at its most fundamental level. This convergence of science and spirituality is not coincidental but inevitable. Both are attempting to understand the true nature of reality, and as our instruments become more sophisticated and our awareness more refined, the artificial boundaries between different ways of knowing begin to collapse. The meditation master who speaks of pure awareness and the quantum physicist who describes the collapse of the wave function are pointing to the same fundamental mystery, the role of consciousness in creating the world we experience. Modern neuroscience has added another layer to this understanding, revealing that the brain is far more plastic and creative than we ever imagined. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every intention you hold literally reshapes the neural pathways in your brain. This neuroplasticity means that you are constantly rewriting the story of who you are at the most fundamental biological level. The ancient practice of meditation, which mystics have used for millennia to transform consciousness, is now being validated by brain imaging that shows measurable changes in the structure and function of the brain after just weeks of practice. But perhaps the most profound convergence between mystical wisdom and scientific discovery lies in the recognition that healing happens not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The placebo effect, once dismissed as a nuisance that interfered with real medicine, is now understood to demonstrate the extraordinary power of consciousness to heal the body. When someone experiences genuine healing through belief alone, they are not fooling themselves. They are accessing the deepest mechanisms of how consciousness and biology interact. The field of epigenetics has revealed that our genes are not our destiny, but rather a vast library of possibilities that consciousness can access through the signals we send to our cells moment by moment. The quality of your thoughts, the depth of your emotions, the intentions you hold, all of these are constantly communicating with your genetic expression, turning genes on and off in a dynamic dance between awareness and biology. The mystics claim that consciousness can transcend the limitations of matter, finds its scientific validation in the emerging understanding of how mental states directly influence physical reality. This is not about choosing between science and spirituality, but about recognizing that they are complementary ways of exploring the same infinite mystery. The quantum field that physicists describe as the realm of pure potential is the same field that mystics have called the source, the void, the ground of being. The consciousness that neuroscientists are beginning to study is the same awareness that contemplatives have been exploring for thousands of years. We are living at a moment in history when the deepest insights of human wisdom traditions are being confirmed and expanded by the most sophisticated tools of scientific investigation. As you integrate this understanding, allow yourself to feel the wonder of participating in a universe that is far more magical and meaningful than the mechanistic worldview would suggest. You are not a separate being struggling to survive in an unconscious cosmos, but a focal point of cosmic consciousness itself, temporarily dreaming the dream of individuality while never losing your connection to the infinite source from which all things arise and to which all things return. Your body is not what you think it is. For most of your life, you have probably related to your physical form as if it were a solid, separate object, a biological machine that carries your consciousness around like a passenger in a vehicle. But this perception, convincing as it may feel, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what your body actually is. Your body is not a thing but a process, not a structure but a flowing river of intelligence that is constantly creating and recreating itself from moment to moment. Every second, millions of chemical reactions are taking place within you with a precision and coordination that surpasses the most sophisticated computer systems ever created. Your heart beats approximately 100,000 times each day without any conscious effort on your part. Your lungs extract oxygen from the air and release carbon dioxide in a perfect exchange with the plant kingdom. Your immune system recognizes friend from foe among billions of cellular interactions, mounting precise defenses against threats while maintaining harmony with beneficial organisms. This is not the mechanical functioning of unconscious matter, but the expression of a living intelligence that permeates every cell of your being. Consider this remarkable fact. The atoms that make up your body are mostly empty space. If you could shrink down to the subatomic level and explore the space between the nucleus and electrons of any atom in your body, you would find vast regions of what appears to be nothingness. Yet this empty space is not empty at all, but filled with the quantum field, the invisible realm of infinite potential from which all matter and energy arise. You are literally more space than substance, more field than form, more consciousness than matter. Breathe deeply for a moment and feel the life force moving through your body. This is not simply air entering your lungs, but the very essence of life itself flowing into every cell, carrying with it the intelligence that coordinates the countless processes happening within you right now. Your breath is a bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the formless field of consciousness and the world of form. Modern science has discovered something that mystics have always known. Your body carries the wisdom of the entire evolutionary journey within its cellular memory. The salt in your tears is the same concentration as the ancient oceans where life first began. The calcium in your bones was forged in the nuclear furnaces of dying stars. The iron in your blood was scattered across the cosmos by supernovae billions of years ago. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe itself, temporarily organized into the form you call your body. But the most profound truth about your body is that it is constantly listening to your consciousness and responding accordingly. Every thought you think sends chemical signals throughout your system. Every emotion you feel creates a cascade of molecular changes that reach into every organ, every tissue, every cell. Your body is not just carrying your consciousness, it is literally being created by your consciousness moment by moment. This is why the quality of your inner life has such a direct impact on your physical health. When you live in a state of chronic stress or fear, your body responds by producing stress hormones that over time can contribute to inflammation, immune suppression, and disease. When you cultivate states of peace, joy, and love, your body responds by producing healing chemicals that promote regeneration, boost immune function, and enhance overall vitality. Your pharmacy is not in the medicine cabinet, but within your own consciousness. The placebo effect demonstrates this mind-body connection in its most dramatic form. When someone experiences genuine healing after taking what they believe to be medicine, but is actually an inactive substance, their body is responding not to the pill, but to the power of their own belief and expectation. The consciousness that believes in healing activates the body's innate healing mechanisms, often producing results that are indistinguishable from those created by pharmaceutical drugs. This is not self-deception, but self-healing, the natural response of a body that is designed to maintain perfect health when consciousness provides the right signals. Your body also carries the accumulated wisdom of all your experiences, storing memories, not just in your brain, but in your tissues, your posture, your breathing patterns, and your cellular structure. Trauma can be held in the body for years or even decades, continuing to influence your physical and emotional well-being long after the original event has passed. But the same body that can hold trauma also has an infinite capacity for healing and renewal when consciousness brings awareness and love to these stored patterns. Notice now where you might be holding tension in your body. Perhaps your shoulders carry the weight of responsibilities, or your jaw holds the stress of unspoken words. Simply bringing conscious awareness to these areas can begin to release the patterns that no longer serve you. Your attention itself is a healing force, a gentle light that dissolves the shadows of stored stress and trauma. The ancient traditions understood the body as a temple, a sack, red vessel through which consciousness expresses itself in the physical world. This is not metaphor but literal truth. Your body is the temporary home of an eternal awareness, and how you treat this vessel directly impacts the quality of consciousness that can flow through it. When you nourish your body with healthy food, pure water, fresh air, and regular movement, you are creating the optimal conditions for consciousness to express its full potential through your physical form. But even more important than what you put into your body is the quality of consciousness you bring to it. When you eat with gratitude and awareness, the same food becomes more nourishing. When you move with joy and presence, exercise becomes a celebration rather than a chore. When you rest with complete surrender, sleep becomes a return to the source of all energy and vitality. Your body is constantly teaching you about the nature of impermanence and renewal. Every cell in your body replaces itself regularly. Your stomach lining regenerates every few days. Your skin renews itself every few weeks. Even your bones completely rebuild themselves every few years. The body you inhabit today is literally not the same body you had 7 years ago. Yet something remains constant through all this change. That constant is the consciousness that you are, the awareness that witnesses all transformation, while itself remaining timeless and unchanging. As you deepen your understanding of your body as living consciousness, you begin to relate to it not as an object you possess, but as a sacred expression of the same intelligence that moves the stars and grows the flowers. This shift in perception is not just philosophical but practical. opening the door to levels of health, vitality, and well-being that become possible when consciousness and biology recognize themselves as one seamless whole. Right now, as you read these words, there is something within you that is reading, something that is aware of the thoughts arising in your mind, something that remains present and unchanged, whether your thoughts are peaceful or turbulent, clear or confused. This something is not your thoughts themselves, but the awareness in which all thoughts appear and disappear like clouds in an infinite sky. Most people live their entire lives completely identified with the content of their thinking, never recognizing the vast spaciousness of the observer that witnesses all mental activity without being disturbed by any of it. You have been taught to believe that you are your thoughts, that the constant stream of mental commentary running through your mind is who you are. But this is like believing that you are the movie playing on the screen, rather than the screen itself on which all movies appear. The thoughts that arise in your consciousness, your worries about the future, your memories of the past, your judgments about yourself and others, are simply phenomena appearing in awareness. They are not you any more than the clouds of the sky or the waves of the ocean. Take a moment to step back from whatever thoughts are present right now and simply observe them. Notice that there is a part of you that see and watch your thoughts without being caught up in their content. This witnessing presence is always here, always available, always peaceful, regardless of what kinds of thoughts are moving through your mind. This is your true nature, not the thinker, but the awareness in which thinking appears. The recognition of yourself as the observer rather than the observed is perhaps the most liberating discovery you can make. When you realize that you are the awareness that witnesses thoughts rather than the thoughts themselves, you are no longer at the mercy of every random mental impulse that arises. You gain the freedom to choose which thoughts deserve your attention and which can simply be allowed to pass by like leaves floating down a stream. This is not about stopping thoughts or controlling your mind, but about recognizing the space of awareness that is larger than any thought that could ever arise within it. Most suffering comes from the mistaken belief that you are your thoughts and that you must therefore defend, justify, or change them. But from the perspective of the observer, thoughts are seen to be temporary visitors in the space of consciousness, arising and dissolving according to their own natural rhythm. You don't need to fight with your thoughts or try to make them different than they are. You simply need to remember who you really are, the unchanging awareness that watches the entire dance of mental activity with perfect equanimity. This observer consciousness is not something you need to create or develop. It is what you already are, what you have always been, what you will always be. It is the one constant in a life of constant change, the still center around which all experience revolves. When you were a child, this same awareness was present, watching the world through younger eyes. As you have grown and changed, this awareness has remained exactly the same. It will be present in your final moments, witnessing even the transition of death with the same peaceful presence it brings to every moment of life. The thoughts that claim to define you, I am successful, I am a failure, I am loved, I am alone, are all simply appearances in consciousness, no more real or permanent than the images that appear in a dream. The awareness that you truly are is prior to all such definitions, untouched by any story the mind might create about who you are or what your life means. This recognition brings a profound sense of freedom and peace, for you realize that no thought, no matter how convincing or persistent, can actually define or limit the infinite awareness that you are. When you rest in this understanding, meditation becomes effortless because you realize you are not trying to achieve some special state of consciousness. You are simply recognizing the consciousness that is already here. The peace you seek is not something to be attained, but something to be remembered, not something outside yourself, but the very ground of your being. In any moment of distress or confusion, you can return to this simple recognition. You are not the storm of thoughts and emotions, but the vacuum, essence sky in which all weather patterns appear and disappear. Every emotion you have ever felt, from the most profound joy to the deepest sorrow, is essentially energy in motion, a vibration moving through the field of your consciousness like a wave moving through water. Yet most people relate to their emotions as solid, permanent states that define who they are and determine how they must feel about their lives. They say, "I am angry," or "I am sad," as if these temporary energetic states were their permanent identity, not recognizing that emotions are simply waves of energy that arise, peak, and naturally dissolve when they are not resisted or artificially prolonged. Understanding emotion as energy in motion transforms your entire relationship to your inner emotional landscape. Instead of being overwhelmed by feelings or trying desperately to avoid them, you can learn to work with emotional energy as skillfully as a surfer works with waves. The key is not to fight against the emotion or to try to make it different than it is, but to allow it to move through you naturally while maintaining your connection to the awareness that remains unaffected by any emotional state. When you truly understand that emotions are energy, you realize that even the most difficult feelings carry within them the seeds of transformation and healing. Anger, when fully felt and expressed appropriately, can provide the energy needed to establish healthy boundaries and create positive change. Sadness, when allowed to flow naturally, can soften the heart and deepen your capacity for compassion and connection. Fear, when faced directly, can awaken your courage and reveal inner strengths you didn't know you possessed. The problem arises when emotional energy becomes stuck, when the natural flow of feeling is blocked by resistance, judgment, or the attempt to maintain emotional states that feel good while avoiding those that feel challenging. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They become stored in the body as tension, manifesting as physical symptoms, chronic stress, or sudden emotional outbursts that seem to come from nowhere. Learning to allow emotions to flow naturally through your system is essential for both emotional well-being and physical health. Breathe deeply now and scan your body for any areas where you might be holding emotional energy. Perhaps there is tightness in your chest that speaks of unexpressed grief, or tension in your shoulders that carries the weight of accumulated stress. Simply bringing gentle awareness to these areas and breathing into them can begin to release the stored energy and allow it to flow naturally once again. The ancient wisdom traditions understood that emotions are not personal problems to be solved, but universal energies to be honored and integrated. Joy is not your joy alone, but the joy of existence itself flowing through the unique instrument of your consciousness. Love is not something you possess, but something you allow to move through you, blessing both yourself and everyone you encounter. Even challenging emotions, like anger or fear, are not signs of failure, but invitations to deeper understanding and greater compassion for the human experience. One of the most powerful practices for working with emotional energy is to stop labeling emotions as positive or negative and instead recognize them all as forms of life force energy that carry important information and opportunities for growth. When you stop judging your emotions and start experiencing them as energy in motion, you discover that even the most challenging feelings have a natural beginning, middle, and end. They arise, peak, and dissolve on their own when you don't interfere with their natural flow. The breath is your most powerful tool for working with emotional energy. When emotions feel overwhelming, slow, conscious breathing can help you stay present with the feeling without being swept away by it. Each exhale releases stuck energy, while each inhale brings fresh life force that can help transform the emotional state from within. Try breathing consciously with whatever you're feeling right now, sending your breath directly into the center of the emotion and noticing how this changes your relationship to it.